The first of 7 stages of spiritual alchemy is calcination. This is breaking down the parts of ourselves that are in the way of our own happiness. This is your ego, your pride, your arrogance, self-sabotage, stubbornness, and self-doubt. So a lot of times it's easier to blame other people for being in the way of our own happiness, and that is ultimately your ego talking, when it is in fact you in the way of your own happiness, because you're allowing other people, things, or places to be in the way of your own happiness, but you aren't acknowledging that because your ego is in the way, because it's hard to believe, why would I be in the way of my own happiness? Yes, you can be. It's self-sabotage, it's self-doubt, it's saying that you can't when you actually can. It's believing. So you break down those parts. It's called calcination. Second stage of spiritual alchemy is dissolution. This is a less identification with the false sense of self. This is your spiritual maturity, accountability, and this can be caused by accidents, traumas, losses, and misfortunes. So a lot of time people create their identity based off of traumas, losses, and misfortunes. That's how they identify themselves. They live and breathe off of I've been hurt, being the victim. So when you kind of dissolve this part of you, this ego part of you that's blocking you, that's shielding you from becoming your true self, that is what we call dissolution. That is when your spiritual maturity starts to increase and you realize that you are no longer the person who you were in the world. You're becoming a whole new person, and ultimately that person is your true self, your true identity, that you no longer have to identify with the pains that you have had before. Stage 3 of the stages of spiritual alchemy is separation, isolating defined thoughts and emotions from other thoughts and emotions. This is about forgiveness, you identifying authentic feelings and experiences. True anger, frustration, and disappointment comes from this because you're now doing a shadow work. So people who have experienced this stage and who still go through the stages, you often do your shadow work, which is truly ugly, period, because you're looking at yourself as your ego, and then your ego is staring back at yourself, and vice versa. So when you separate thoughts and emotions from other thoughts and emotions, that is how you're responding to other people, places, or things, because your ego says respond this way, which is the ugly part of it, and then yourself says no, you respond from a place of truth, wisdom, honesty, love, and integrity and dignity. And ultimately with your spiritual maturity, you'll always go with your higher self, your true self. Part 4 is conjunction, inner space, and simmering. This is accepting all parts of your authentic self. The unconscious thoughts may bubble to the surface. So this is the time that, this is the time for yourself, that you're actually trying to see, wow, how I really feel about a situation from my spirituality, from a place of wisdom, from a place of true love for yourself, and not necessarily for the love from other people that you're receiving. So this is allowing yourself the time to be unbusy, to really sit with yourself and your thoughts, to actually view things differently, to see how you respond differently. This is acknowledging that you are now thinking different. The way to master being different is first you have to start thinking different. So this conjunction time is allowing that time to start thinking different. Fermentation is step 5. It's the rebirth. They compare it to the death of a grape and the birth of a wine. So this is when you're experiencing a more refined self. It occurs in 2 parts. So is purification, which is the decomposition of the former self, which is an inner death. A lot of people experience the dark night of the soul. YouTube or read on the dark night of the soul. That's going to be a whole separate live. I may do that next, but I experienced it, and wow is all I have to say. And the second part is spiritualization. You look at the world in a new light. So as you're going through the conjunction period, you're now seeing that you see things differently. You no longer view them as you viewed them before while you were in your false sense of self. As you're coming into your new sense of self, you're being guided by your inner work, all the work you do for yourself, letting go of all aspects that do not serve or contribute to your evolution. So this is tasting great moments of inner peace and stillness. If it doesn't serve you, you got to let it go. 6 is distillation, integrating all of your spiritual realizations to become permanent. So this is finding new ways to live daily in your inner peace. Enlightenment and repeating practices in their present moments without including those bad habits of your former self, of the ego self. So this is when you're learning to respond rather than to react to things. So this is when you're realizing like, wow, I'm enlightened. I see things differently. I love differently because I love my true self. I'm no longer who I was before, so I don't have to be who I was before. And you're accepting that of you, therefore you won't have to wait for other people to accept that of you. So you're realizing that everything that you've learned through doing your inner work is permanent within you. You just have to continue to live daily, which requires a lot of meditation and energy healing and gratitude work and things like that. But as long as you integrate Part 7 is coagulation. This is breaking open the head, becoming free from the mind, this mind, and allowing your soul to connect to your spirit. So this is when you are in the true moments of realizing that I've made it, I've awakened. This is where they compare two opposites meeting. This is your spiritual self meeting and the raw matter meeting. So your inner meeting with the outer, with your shell. This is compared to heaven and hell meeting. This is life and death. Existence become more aware. You're living without duality. Your spiritual manifests in the material form. So everything you say is coming to light. You could touch it. You could feel it. The physical universe is a reflection of your spirit and your mind. So when you start treating yourself, your inner self, as it's beautiful as it is, then your physical realm is going to be a reflection of your spirit and your mind. So for those of you who have gone through this or is going through this and you just don't know what the hell you're going through, people are going to think you're crazy. You are even going to think that you are going crazy. And in a sense, you are, because you're realizing who you were for your entire lifetime up until this point is no longer who you are becoming. And who you are becoming is your true self. You're going to learn to speak from a place of truth. You're integrating all of these things that you've learned. You're leaving the pain behind. You're actually turning the pain into something so much more beautiful because you've allowed yourself to go through those stages. You've healed yourself through those stages by doing the inner work that you're supposed to do. So people who know the old you, who know your former self, your ego self, is going to see someone that they're not used to, and they're going to be expecting you to be that old person, but you're not. And that's okay. You are not that person, and you no longer have to be that person. My advice for anyone going through this spiritual enlightenment or awakening period is that you be honest with yourself. Journal everything, especially about how you feel. Journal it all. Journal the things that you see that maybe people around you didn't see. The number sinks, the spirit guides, the insects, the animals, things like that. Journal it and be honest the entire time. You're not going crazy. I promise you. You are just shedding the person that you knew your entire life. So who you are meeting now is a totally new person, and you just don't know where to begin with that person. But you begin, and you be patient with yourself and honest with yourself the whole time. You're going to meet people along this journey that have been through just what you're going through, and they're going to be there to help you heal. This is the first part, is doing the inner work, acknowledging that you are no longer who you were, and there's a new person dying to come out. It's the rebirth.